يفقهوا قولي وبعد. So today I wanted to discuss with you guys بإذن regarding the madhab of the Hanabilah and their position on Tajsim, right? The Hanabilah and anthropomorphism. So there are a few masail that we need to deal with, we need to look at. First one is, what does al-jism mean linguistically and technically, right? Number two, do we negate jismiyah without hesitation and elaboration, or do we simply refrain from negating or affirming? Or even worse yet, do we say that negating jismiyah in any way is considered to be a reprehensible innovation? Number three, what or when does an individual or when does someone fall into tajsim? What is considered tajsim? And then lastly, what is the ruling of at-tajsim? Giving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a body. What is the ruling of at-tajsim according to the Hanabilah? And why is it that the Hanabilah have given the Mujassim such a ruling? So for the first question, which is, what does jism mean linguistically and technically? We have the statement of the great linguist Abu Mansur al-Azhari, who was born 282 after Hijrah, and he passed away year 370 after Hijrah. He says in his book تهذيب اللغة, جسم قال الليث الجسم يجمع البدن وأعضاءه من الناس والإبل والدواب ونحو ذلك. Jism, he says, and then he quotes al-Layth. He said, al-Layth said, Jism is anything that gathers or makes up the body and its parts in humans, camels, animals, and the likes. طيب, so who's al-Layth here who's being quoted? Al-Layth here is al-Layth ibn al-Muzaffar al-Kinani, and he was a student of al-Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi, who was from the A'immah of the Arabic language. And of course, so was al-Layth, who was his student. And al-Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi was born year 100 after Hijrah and passed away year 170 after Hijrah. As for al-Layth ibn al-Muzaffar, then I'm uncertain. I couldn't find the year he passed away or when he was born. But what is sufficient for us to know is that they were from the A'immah of the Arabic language. Okay? And not only were they from the A'immah of the Lughah, but they were from the A'immah of the Lughah from the Salaf. Okay? So the definition of jism here mentioned by Abu Mansur al-Azhari is from an Imam of the Arabic language from the Salaf, and that is namely al-Layth ibn al-Muzaffar al-Kinani. Right? And then we have Ibn Faris. He passed away year 395 after Hijrah, and he says the following in his book مقاييس اللغة: الجيم والسين والميم يدل على تجمع الشيء. The jim and the sin and the meme indicate something coming together or being fit together. And Ibn Faris gives the same definition for the word jasad. طيب, so let's move on now to the technical definition. Right? And the technical definition is the definition that has been given for this word, for a particular subject. Right? And in this case, it is the definition given in the books of Aqidah. We have the statement of Imam al-Safarini al-Hanbali. He says the following in Lawami al-Anwar al-Bahiyya. He says, وهو ما تركب من جزئين فصاعدا وعند بعض النظار لابد من تركبه من 3 أجزاء لتتحقق الأبعاد الثلاثة أعني الطول والعرض والعمق. He says, and it is anything that consists of 2 parts or more. And according to some scholars, it must consist of 3 parts, making it 3-dimensional. And then he says, I intend by that length, width and depth. Ibn Balban al-Hanbali says the following in his book قلائد الأقيان: والجسم ما يتألف من جزئين فصاعدا. And the body is whatever consists of 2 parts or more. Ibn Hamdan al-Hanbali passed away year 695 after Hijrah. He says in his book نهاية المبتدئين: والجسم ما تألف من جزئين فصاعدا. And the body is whatever consists of 2 parts or more. Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la al-Hanbali year 458 says in his Mukhtasar al-Mu'tamad, and he says something similar in his book Ibtal al-Ta'wilat: وَكُلُّ جِسْمٍ مُؤَلَّفٍ. And each body is made up of parts. So with this, insha'Allah ta'ala, it becomes abundantly clear that a technical definition of jism is directly derived from the Arabic language itself. And this is also mentioned by Abu Ya'la and Abu al-Fadl al-Tamimi al-Hanbali, who passed away year 410. And not only that, he attributes this to Imam Ahmad. Okay? Can you guys still hear me? I hope you guys can hear me. I'm not just talking away and no one can hear me. على كل حال. Let's move on to the second mas'ala. The second issue. Bismillah. And the second mas'ala is, do we negate jismiyah unequivocally, or do we hesitate and refrain from affirming or negating, or do we say that it is an innovation to or do we say that it is an innovation, a reprehensible innovation, to affirm or negate, to negate jism to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So before we start quoting scholars in these issues, it is worth mentioning that every scholar we have quoted so far for the technical definition of jism, they also unequivocally negate jism to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we've quoted As-Safarini, Ibn Balban, Ibn Hamdan and Abu Ya'la, and they all negate body to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, I'll say that it is something that the scholars of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah all agree upon. So we'll begin with the negation of jismiyah that is attributed to Imam Ahmad. Right? And this statement is brought by Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. Okay, and he's also from the Hanabilah, and he attributes the following statement to Imam Ahmad in his book Al-Musawwadah. Okay, and he says, قال أحمد ويلزم شرعا كل مسلم مكلف قادر معرفة الله بصفاته التي تليق به والإيمان بما صح عن الله ورسوله عليه السلام مع التنزيه عن التشبيه والتجسيم والتكييف والتمثيل والتفسير والتأويل والتعطيل وكل نقص. He says, and it is obligatory in the Sharia for every able Muslim of legal capacity to have knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala along with His attributes as they befit His majesty, and to believe in that which has been correctly reported from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam with extolment and freeing him subhanahu wa ta'ala from comparison, tashbih, anthropomorphism, tajsim and ta'wil and ta'til wa kulli naqs, as he mentioned. Abu al-Fadl al-Tamimi passed away year 410 after Hijrah, right? He was the head of the Hanabilah of his time. He says in his book اعتقاد الإمام المنبل أحمد بن حنبل, attributing this statement to Al-Imam Ahmad, he said وأنكر أي الإمام أحمد وأنكر على من يقول بالجسم, and he, Al-Imam Ahmad, would rebuke those who would attribute a body to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you've got more statements similar to this. and these statements being attributed to Imam Ahmad, but we will suffice with these two statements. And we say that this is understood, the statement of Ibn Taymiyyah and the statement of Abu al-Fadl al-Tamimi. This is understood and taken from the statement of Imam Ahmad, his riwayah, where he says, bila haddin wala ghaya, without a limit and without an ending. So al-hadd in the Arabic language, huwa tarafu shay, right? It is the edge, the border, the outline of something, which is why we say haddul yad atrafuha, or haddul jism atrafuhu. The limit of the hand or body are its edges, or what outlines it. Al-ghaya in the Arabic language means an-nihaya wal-akhir, anything that has an ending, a point of termination, right? Anything that has an ending, a point of termination. Which is why we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His perfect names and His attributes are limitless and endless. So the statement of Imam Ahmad, bila haddin wala ghaya, which is the negation of limit and endings, we say is tantamount to the negation of a body to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that which has a limit, an ending, edges, a point of termination, that defines the structure of this being or person or essence, then this can only be a body. As for the one who has no body, then he has no limit, and neither does he have an ending. Which is why Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la says the following in his book Mukhtasar al-Mu'tamad. He says, فَإِنْ قِيلَ هُوَ مَحْدُودٌ وَلَهُ نِهَايَةٌ. Right? If it's said, is he limited? Does he have an ending? قِيلَ, the response is, هُوَ خَالِقُ الْمَحْدُودَاتِ وَجَاعِلُ ذِي النِّهَايَاتِ لَيْسَ بِمَحْدُودٍ وَلَا مُتَنَاهٍ هُوَ الَّذِي لَا تُحِيطُهُ النِّهَايَاتِ وَلَا تَلْحَقُهُ الْغَايَاتِ. So the question is, if it is said, is he limited and does he have an ending? It is said he is the creator of limits. We say what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of limits. وَجَاعِلُ ذِي النِّهَايَاتِ, and the maker of that which has endings. لَيْسَ بِمَحْدُودٍ وَلَا مُتَنَاهٍ. He is not limited, nor does he have an ending. And he is the one who is not encompassed by endings, and neither is he affected by it, unlike the creation. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali passed away year 795 after Hijrah. He says the following in his book Fathul Bari, bringing the statement of Abu Dawood al-Tayalisi, who said, كان سفيان الثوري وشعبة وحماد بن زيد وحماد بن سلمة وشريك وأبو عوانة لا يجسدون ولا يشبهون ولا يمثلون الحديث لا يقولون كيف وإذا سئلوا أجابوا بالأثر. Very simple. Abu Dawood al-Tayalisi passed away 204, right? And he was from the teachers of Imam Ahmad. He said that Sufyan al-Thawri, year 161, Shu'bah 160, Hammad ibn Zayd 179, Hammad ibn Salama 167, Sharik 177 after Hijrah, and Abu Awana passed away year 176. What did he say? They would not anthropomorphize. لا يجسدون. يعني they will not give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a body. Nor would they compare or liken the hadith, meaning the hadith pertaining to the attributes to the creation. And neither would they say kayf, meaning they would negate kayf. And if they were asked, they would respond with a narration. For example, if they were asked regarding al-istiwa, they would say ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. Khalas. If they were asked regarding an-nuzul, they would say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yanzilu ila sama'i dunya. The hadith. Khalas. Right? Qira'atuhu tafsiruhu. Its recitation is its tafsir. They would respond with the narration. And the chain of narration has been transmitted and checked by Imam al-Bayhaqi, and this is mentioned by Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. He says that this chain of narration has been transmitted and checked by al-Bayhaqi, and so he accepted it and narrated it. And then we've got Al-Imam al-Tabari, passed away year 310 after Hijrah, the illustrious Mufassir. He says in his book تاريخ الرسل والملوك: القول في الدلالة على أن الله عز وجل right القديم الأول قبل شيء وأنه هو المحدث right وأنه هو المحدث كل شيء بقدرته تعالى ذكره، فمن الدلالة على ذلك أنه لا شيء في العالم مشاهد إلا جسم أو قائم بجسم، وأنه لا جسم إلا مفترق أو مجتمع. طيب, he's saying proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is eternal, that he is the first before everything, and that he is indeed the cause of everything with his power. Exalted is his mention. And from the proof of the aforementioned, what we just mentioned, is that nothing in the observed creation exists except that it has a body or exists within a body. Okay, and then he says a body is either joined together, connected, or it is disconnected. I'm not sure if I'm still here. I got disconnected. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me now. Let me see, 1 second. Let's have a look here. دقيقة. Okay. Uthman, can you hear me? Can you still hear me now? طيب, good. So At-Tabari here basically, At-Tabari here is saying that the creation has a beginning and a cause for its existence. Why? What is the reason? He says because of its anthropomorphic nature, having a body. And this is not the case for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is qadim. Right? Let's move on. And he says the following as well in his التبصير في معالم الدين. He says وله يدان ويمين وأصابع وليست جارحة ولكن يدان مبسوطتان بالنعم على الخلق مقبوضة عن الخير. عفوا أعوذ بالله لا مقبوضة عن الخير. Okay? After affirming يدان يمين and أصابع, he says, and it is not a limb but they are outstretched, granting blessings upon the creation, not clench, preventing good. Right? Abu Bakr al-Ismaili says in his book اعتقاد الحديث or اعتقاد أئمة الحديث, when speaking about seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hereafter, he says وذلك من غير اعتقاد التجسيم في الله عز وجل ولا التحديد له. Right? ولا التحديد له ولكن يرونه جل وعز بأعينهم على ما يشاء بلا كيف. And we affirm that we'll see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without the belief in at-tajsim, that Allah has a body, and without a limit, negating limit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, but they will see him with their eyes upon what he will, without kayf, negating kayf. And regarding al-yadayn, he says the following: ولا يعتقد فيه الأعضاء والجوارح ولا الطول والعرض والغلظ والدقة ونحو هذا مما يكون مثله في الخلق وأنه ليس كمثله شيء. And it is not believed regarding his al-yadayn, it is not believed to be a body part, a limb, nor does he have Nor do we affirm length, width, thickness, thinness, and the likes to it, because that is for the creation, and there's nothing like him. So with this statement, the literal meaning of al-yadayn, as we know, because the only meaning of al-yad that we know is for the creation, this meaning is negated, and that is al-jariha. Okay. However, the attribute of al-yadayn is still affirmed, and the meaning is known only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la says the same thing in his Mukhtasar al-Mu'tamad, and he says something very similar for Sifat al-Yadayn in his Ibtal al-Ta'wilat, similar to what al-Ismail al-Tabari said. He said, وَقَدْ وَصَفَ نَفْسَهُ سُبْحَانَهُ بِالْيَدَيْنِ وَلَيْسَ بِجَارِحَتَيْنِ وَلَا بِمَعْنَى النِّعْمَةِ وَلَا بِمَعْنَى الْقُدْرَةِ بَلْ هِيَ صِفَةٌ ذَاتِيَّةٌ. يعني what do we mean أنها صفة ذاتية؟ أي أنه سبحانه وتعالى موصوف بها في الأزل. That is what we mean for those who speak Arabic. صفة ذاتية خلافا للمجسمة في قولهم إنهما جارحتان، وخلافا للمعتزلة وجماعة من الأشعرية إنهما نعمة وقدرة. And he says, Abu Ya'la, and he has attributed himself subhanahu wa ta'ala with al-yadayn, sifatul yadayn. And they are not two limbs, and neither do they mean ni'mah, blessing, nor do they mean qudra, power. Rather, it is an attribute of the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means that it is a pre-eternal attribute like all the other attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, as opposed to what the mujassima say, the anthropomorphist, what do they say? That indeed there are two limbs, jarihatan. Now see how he calls the one who affirms the literal known meaning of al-yadayn, known to us, which is al-jariha, as mujassim, and opposed to the mu'tazila and a group from the Ash'ara during his time. It was a group from the Ash'ara who would also say that he meant ni'mah and qudra. Okay, because he had Ash'ara at that time, they would affirm the attribute of al-yadayn, no problem. And then Al-Qadi, we have his son, Al-Qadi Ibn Abi Ya'la al-Hanbali, passed away 526 after Hijrah. And he narrates the Aqeedah of Al-Qadi Sharif Abu Ali al-Hanbali, who passed away 428 in his Tabaqat al-Hanabilah. He says, صفاته كذاته ليس بجسم في صفاته جل أن يشبه بمبتدعاته أو أن يضاف إلى مصنوعاته ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. Simple. Say this and it is sufficient. Right? The Athari Aqeedah can be summarized in 2 lines. His attributes are like the essence. Anthropomorphism, right, does not apply to himself, nor his attributes. Far removed is he from being compared or attached to his creation. Nothing is like him, and he is all hearing and all seeing. And there are many more quotes from the scholars of the Hanabilah where they negate Jismiyah unequivocally, without any issues. But we will suffice with one last quote, and it is from none other than Shaykh Ismail Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi al-Hanbali. And he says in his book تحريم النظر في كتب أهل الكلام وألسنتنا تصرح بنفي التشبيه والتمثيل والتجسيم فليس لهم أن يتحكموا علينا بأن ينسبوا إلينا ما لم يظهر منا ولم يصدر عنا. He says, on our tongues unequivocally negate at-tashbih, at-tamthil, comparison, and at-tajsim. We have no issues unequivocally negating at-tajsim. Yani subhanallah. At-tajsim, anthropomorphism. So then he says, it is not for them, afwan, it is not for them to dominate over us or have their way over us by attributing to us that which has not been said by us or emerged from us. So with this, insha'Allah ta'ala, it becomes abundantly clear that there should be no hesitation whatsoever in negating jismiyya to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's no need to make up a false or an extremely rare or an unknown definition which contradicts both the technical and the linguistic meaning of the word. And the linguistic meaning here, which is the haqiqi, the literal meaning. Now suddenly we don't affirm the haqiqi meaning for jismiyya, right? Suddenly we make tafweed for jism. Subhanallah. So the literal meaning, which is to refrain, they do that in order to maybe refrain or escape from negating it unequivocally. Or sometimes maybe it is just to hide one's true belief. Allahu a'lam. Now we've quoted scholars from every era negating jism. So for someone to use the word jism for any other definition than the one that we've mentioned is ridiculous. Because this is the definition that is known and understood in the clear Arabic language. Okay? And neither do we say that negating jism or jariha to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a reprehensible innovation, and that it is not from the way of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Wal-'iyadu billah. Rather, this is the way of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Okay? Rather, this is from the way of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and to refrain from negating jism to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while the meaning is known and clear in the Arabic language, that is an innovation. As for kayf, I have not translated kayf, but kayf, maybe we can look at la kayf wa la ma'na maybe some other time, but it is sufficient for us to say that kayf has been negated as well, and kayf depends upon something having a body, form, shape. Okay. Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la, he says in his Mukhtasar al-Mu'tamad, he said he said that you do not affirm kayf. Okay. So ولا يقول عنه الكيف. Why? لأن الكيف يقتضي الشبه والنظير, if I remember it correctly. And it is, kayf cannot be said to Allah. Right? Why? Because the moment you say kayf, modality, that is tantamount to have given a similitude or a comparison to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is mentioned by Qadi Abu Ya'la. Now this leads us to the third issue. How does one fall into tashbih, tajsim? We'll let Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Qudama answer this, and he says the following in his book, Tahrim al-Nadhr. He says, وَإِنَّمَا يَحْصُلُ التَّشْبِيهُ وَالتَّجْسِيمُ مِمَّنْ حَمَلَ صِفَاتِ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى على صفات المخلوقين في المعنى ونحن لا نعتقد ذلك ولا ندين به بل نعلم أن الله تبارك وتعالى ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير وأن صفاته لا تشبه صفات المحدثين وكل ما خطر بقلب أو وهم فالله عز وجل بخلافه لا شبيه له ولا نظير ولا عدل ولا ظهير ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. He says, indeed anthropomorphism occurs when you compare between the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to that of the creation. How? In their meaning. In the meaning. And he says, and we do not believe that, and neither do we base our religion on it. Rather, we know that there's nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is all hearing and all seeing, and that indeed His attributes cannot be compared to the attributes of the creation. And anything that crosses your mind, and people have issue with this as well, anything that crosses your mind, then Allah is different from it. Allah is far removed from anything that crosses your mind when it comes to Him. He is without comparison, without an equal, without a helper. There's nothing like Him, and He is all hearing and all seeing. An example we can take in order to clarify the statement of Ibn Qudama is al-yad, for example. The only literal meaning we know for al-yad in the Arabic language is that it is a jariha, or udwan lil jasad, a limb, a body part. And this meaning can only befit the creation. And this is in the clear Arabic language, by the way. Yeah? And this is the only literal meaning we know. So the moment you claim to know the meaning and you tell us that it is known in the language and then that it is a literal meaning, then this becomes highly problematic. And worse yet is when people say things like, oh, the same way a camel has a hand that befits it, the same way a clock has a hand that befits it. By the way, when you say that a clock has a hand, that is a metaphor in the English language. The pointer or the dial of the clock is called a hand exactly because it resembles a hand with a pointing finger. And the hand of the camel resembles the hand of the human exactly because it's a body part, which is the case of the clock as well. It's composed of parts. In fact, all hands of the creation fundamentally resemble one another exactly because they are body parts, although having different compositions at times. Hand of the angel, hands of the jinn, hand of the animal, hand of the human, they all resemble each other because they are all body parts. Right? And this is the meaning that befits the creation. So to carry the attribute of al-yadayn of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to mean what we've just mentioned, al-jariha, then this is tajsim without any doubt. Okay? As mentioned by Ibn Qudama. However, if someone does tafsir of sifatul yadayn and he says khalaqa biha al-adam and so on and so forth, right? He mentions the functions of the attributes, the lawazim maybe you could say, as found in the Quran and the Sunnah, then this is fine. Okay? As long as it is statement found in the Quran and the Sunnah. خَلَقَ بِهَا Adam, for example. Why? Because what you're doing now is you are applying the principle قِرَاءَتُهُ تَفْسِيرُهُ قِرَاءَتُهُ تَفْسِيرُهُ. Al-Bayhaqi and Al-Lalaka'i and Ibn Qudama, with a slight variation, they bring the statement of Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he says, ما وصف الله تبارك وتعالى به نفسه في كتابه فقراءته تفسيره ليس لأحد أن يفسره بالعربية ولا بالفارسية. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has attributed himself with in his book, then the tafsir of it is merely its recitation. No one has the right to interpret it, not in the Arabic language and not in the Persian language. And someone wants to come and interpret it in the English language. Ibn Qudama explains this principle in his book Tahrim al-Nadhr. He says the following: إذا سألنا سائل عن معنى هذه الألفاظ قلنا لا نزيدك على ألفاظها زيادة تفيد معنى بل قراءتها تفسيرها من غير معنى بعينه ولا تفسير بنفسه. And if someone was to ask us regarding the meaning of these words, we'd say we will not increase anything to the wording that would inform you of a meaning. Rather, its recitation is its interpretation without a specific meaning or interpretation. So what is it that we believe in then? Again, أنا ناقل, I'm simply a transmitter. Ibn Qudama says, وأما إيماننا بالآيات وأخبار الصفات فإنما هو إيمان بمجرد الألفاظ التي لا شك في صحتها ولا ريب في صدقها وقائلها أعلم بمعناها فآمنا بها على المعنى الذي أراد ربنا تبارك وتعالى فجمعنا بين الإيمان الواجب ونفي التشبيه المحرم. As for a belief in the verses and narrations pertaining to the attributes, then it is indeed only upon their wording, in which there is no doubt on their correctness and authenticity, and the one who has stated them knows their meaning best, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we believe in them on the meaning as intended by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and thus we have combined between having the belief of these attributes, which is wajib, obligatory, whilst at the same time negating comparison, which is haram, impermissible. So we believe in attributes with wordings, with these wordings. This is when it comes to the mutashabih. So for example, we say there's an attribute by the name al-yadayn, and it is different from the attribute of al-ni'mah and al-qudra. Right? And lastly, we'll say that it is that it has a meaning that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. And this is the meaning that we believe and affirm for al-yadayn. This leads us to the fourth issue and the last one. What is the ruling for the one who affirms a body to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? According to the Hanabilah, Ibn Abi Ya'la quotes his father, Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la, in his book Tabaqat al-Hanabilah, and he says, فَمَنْ اعْتَقَدَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ سُبْحَانَهُ جِسْمٌ مِنَ الْأَجْسَامِ وأعطاه حقيقة الجسم من التأليف والانتقال فهو كافر لأنه غير عارف بالله عز وجل لأن الله سبحانه يستحيل وصفه بهذه الصفات وإذا لم يعرف الله سبحانه وجب أن يكون كافرا. يعني سبحان الله. He says, so whomever believes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a body or has a body and ascribes him with the realities of a body from composition of parts and movements, then he is a disbeliever because he does not know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it is impossible aqlan yani for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be described with these attributes. So if he does not know Allah, then how can he be a believer? He must be a disbeliever. Abu al-Khattab al-Kalwadhani al-Hanbali passed away 510 after Hijrah. He says in his Aqidah called الدالية قالوا فأنت تراه جسما مثلنا قلت المجسم عندنا كالملحد. They said, so do you view him to have a body like us? I said, Abu Khattab al-Kalwadhani says, I said, the mujassim, the anthropomorphist, according to us, is like an atheist. Ibn Abi Ya'la says in his book al-I'tiqad, فَنِ اعْتَقَدَ مُعْتَقِدٌ فِي هَذِهِ الصِّفَاتِ ونظائرها مما وردت به الآثار الصحيحة التشبيه في التجسيم والنوع والشكل والطول فهو كافر. So if someone believes regarding these attributes that has come or that has been correctly narrated, and he believes regarding them a comparison in terms of affirming a body, type, form, length, and he affirms this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he is a kafir, he says. Ibn Taymiyyah says in his book Majmu' al-Fatawa, إذ لا يختلف أهل السنة أن الله تعالى ليس كمثله شيء لا في ذاته ولا في صفاته ولا في أفعاله بل أكثر أهل السنة من أصحابنا وغيرهم يكفرون المشبهة والمجسمة. He says, Shaykh Ismail Ibn Taymiyyah says, because Ahlul Sunnah, they do not disagree that there is nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not in his essence, his attributes, nor his actions. Rather, the majority of Ahlul Sunnah from our companions, meaning the Hanabilah, and other than them, regard the Mushabbiha and the Mujassima as disbeliever. Mushabbiha, those who compare Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to his creation, and Mujassima, those who give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a body. Mar'i al-Karim al-Hanbali says in his book Aqawil al-Thiqat, we are soon finishing inshallah ta'ala, defending the Hanabilah from the accusation of al-Tajsim, he says, وَمِنَ الْعَجَبِ أَنَّ أَئِمَّتَنَا الْحَنَابِلَةَ يَقُولُونَ بِمَذْهَبِ السَّلَفِ وَيَصِفُونَ اللَّهَ بِمَا وَصَفَ بِهِ نَفْسَهُ وبما وصف به رسوله من غير تحريف ولا تعطيل ومن غير تكييف ولا تمثيل ومع ذلك فتجد من لا يحتاط في دينه ينسبهم للتجسيم ومذهبهم أن المجسم كافر بخلاف مذهب الشافعية فإن المجسم عندهم لا يكفر فقوم يكفرون المجسم فكيف يقولون بالتجسيم. He says, and what is remarkable is that our Ai from the Hanabilah, they're upon the madhab of the Salaf, they attribute to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only with that which he has attributed himself with, and that which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has attributed him with without distortion, negation, without affirming modality or comparison. And with that, you'll still find those who do not safeguard the religion. They attribute a Tajsim to the Hanabilah, meaning that the Hanabilah attribute a body to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their madhab, meaning the Hanabilah, is that the Mujassim, the one who attributes a body to Allah, is a disbeliever, as opposed to the Shafi'iyya, meaning the Ash'ariyah here, who do not make takfir of the Mujassima. So how can it be said that the position is Tajsim? Lastly, we have Al-Imam Al-Buhuti Al-Hanbali, who says the following in his book Kashaf Al-Qina, and he's the most important and relied upon figure for all the Hanbalis who came after him. He says فَلَا تُقْبَلُ شَهَادَةُ فَاسِقٍ مِنْ جِهَةِ الْأَفْعَالِ كَالزَّانِ وَاللَّائِطِ إلى أن قال أو الرفض أو التجهم بتشديد الهاء ونحوه كالتجسيم وخلق العبد أفعاله فسق ويكفر مجتهدهم الداعية. قال المجد الصحيح أن كل بدعة كفرنا فيها الداعية فإنا نفسق المقلد فيها. Al-Buhuti says regarding the one who attributes a body to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that they are first and foremost from the people of innovation, because we skipped a lot of the quote. And he said then he's a fasiq, the one who says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a body, or he says that the servants are the creators of their own actions, then he's a fasiq. And the mujtahid who calls to this is a kafir. Okay? And then he says, and he brings a quote of Majduddin ibn Taymiyyah, and he says, what is correct in the madhab is that for every innovation we have made takfir of to the caller, to it, we make tafsiq of the muqallid. In short, the Hanabilah make takfir of the mujtahid who says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a body, or has body parts or limbs, and they make tafsiq of the muqallid. Right? And when tafsiq is made upon a muqallid, meaning salah cannot be prayed, his guardianship is lost over his children, and so on and so forth, and there are many issues that falls under this. So what we've learned so far is that we do not restrict a body to be something that is tangible only. Rather, a body is anything that consists of two parts. So what is the position of the Hanabilah? Ibn Abi Ya'la says فالحنبلية لا يقولون في أخبار الصفات بتعطيل المعطلين ولا بتشبيه المشبهين ولا بتأويل المتأولين مذهبهم حق بين باطل وهدى بين ضلالتين. We take the middle path. We affirm them as sifat, and then we consign the meaning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the last issue is, and then we'll stop inshaAllah ta'ala, why do we make takfir of the Mujassim? Why do the Hanabilah make takfir of the Mujassim? We make takfir of the Mujassim because the one who has fallen into Tajsim is like an idol worshipper. How? Because he is worshipping the image that he has created in his mind, and that is similar to the idol worshipper who has physically carved out the image of God that he had in his head on a stone wood, or he paints the image of what he believes or he imagines God to be like on a canvas and whatnot. Ibn Qad al-Najdi says the following regarding the verse ليس كمثله شيء. He says قال بعض العلماء المعطل يعبد عدما والممثل يعبد صنما والموحد يعبد إلها واحدا صمدا. He says, and some scholars say the mu'attil, the one who negated the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worships nothingness. The mumathil, the one who compares Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to his creation, worships an idol. The muwahhid, he who worships the one true God, the master who is free of any needs. Like he has no need for a body. He does not need to eat, drink, having a spouse, children. Essentially anything a body has a need for. Yet everyone is in need of him. Shaykh Ibn Badran al-Hanbali beautifully mentions some of the reason people cling on to that which is ambiguous. He says, فَلَمَّا رَأَيْنَا قَدْ أَطْلَقَ ذَمَّ مُبْتَغِي تَأْوِيلِ الْمُتَشَابِهِ علمنا أن ذلك لكونه يزاحم الباري جل جلاله فيما استأثر بعلمه. نعم، قد قيل اتباع المتشابه قد يكون للتشكيك في القرآن وإضلال العوام، وهو زندقة حكم فاعله القتل، وقد يكون لاعتقاد ظاهر من التجسيم والتشبيه، والأصح فيه كفر فاعله إذ هو كعابد الصنم، وقد يكون على جهة البحث عن تأويله وإيضاح معناه. وفي جوازه قولان بين السلف والخلف، وإجماع السلف على المنع وتفويض أمره إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى. Ibn Badran says the following: however, regarding why people cling on to the mutashabih, he'll mention some of the reasons here. He says, when we understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unconditionally rebuked those who sought to interpret the ambiguous, we learned that this was because it was tantamount to competing or attempting to emulate the Creator, the Sublime, in the knowledge that He alone possesses. And then he says, yes, it might also be said that following the ambiguous could be for the reason to cause doubt in the Quran and misguide the lay people, and this is zandaqah, disbelief. The ruling for the one who does this is death. It could also be due to belief in the apparent that we know, apparent meaning as we know it, from that which is anthropomorphism and comparison. And what is correct regarding such an individual is disbelief, right? Someone who engages in it, someone who engages in it, this is disbelief. Why? Ibn Badran says, because he is similar to the one who worships idols. And it could also be to simply seek to interpret. Another reason, he says, the last reason is because people clinging on to the mutashabih. It could also be to simply seek to interpret and clarify its meaning. And regarding its permissibility, to clarify its meaning, there are two positions between the Salaf and the Khalaf. And the ijma' of the Salaf is the prohibition of interpreting it. And rather, we should consign it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I believe this is sufficient for today, inshaAllah ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And I hope I have sufficiently clarified the position of the Hanabilah and the Athari scholars generally regarding Tajsim and anything related to it. Jazakumullah khairah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.